Greetings dear viewers, it's March 17th and today my video will be about the so-called Russia-Ukraine negotiations. You know, in the last 2 days, but especially yesterday, I received so many questions about them. They asked me, Yuri, is all of this true? Could it really be that Russia will come to an agreement with current regime and that the Russian forces will retreat to their positions? There are a lot of statements about this today. Direct, indirect, from Russian politicians, from the press service of the Russian Ministry of Defense, even from the Russian president's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. Is all of that really true? Don't you understand the consequences? Of course I understand the consequences, and the Ukrainian government understands the consequences, and the Kremlin understands the consequences very well. That's at this very moment, those negotiations have become more an element of war than an element of diplomacy. To begin with, let's figure out why they are being conducted. If we carefully discard all the wrapping and see what goals and objectives are set by one or other side, everything becomes very clear. The main task of the Russian side is to organize humanitarian corridors through contact with Kiev. And it doesn't matter where the population will be evacuated from the cities that are primarily surrounded by the Russian army. In fact, a huge amount of the population in those cities is a big problem for Russia. Because at least at the beginning, people won't be able to work, but they still need food supplies, and the order also needs to be restored at the liberated territories. It makes a difference when you have a city with 300,000 or 400,000 people, and completely another story when you have only 200,000 people. Yes, they will come back later, when the life gets better there. And of course, the less problems cause the liberated territories, the easier it is to control them. This is the first point. But there is also a second point, an external one. If we listen carefully to Vladimir Putin, he says that after winning the war in Ukraine, Russia should not lose the peace in it. And by negotiating with Ukraine officials, the Kremlin is showing, yes, we are ready to negotiate with them, but they are not capable of reaching an agreement. Exactly the same strategy that has been presented in all that useless, meaningless negotiations over the years regarding the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Do you think the Russian side did not understand that they would never be implemented? Yes, they understood perfectly well and negotiated precisely in order to knock out their opponents' arguments later, when the problem would be resolved radically. We tried to negotiate with them. We tried to explain our position. But they just were as stubborn as mule and didn't make any concessions. And that is what Moscow is primarily interested in today. No one there takes seriously the possibility of reaching an agreement with Ukrainian regime. The Kremlin is making use of these talks to ensure that it does not lose the war for peace after it wins the war for Ukraine. But what do the Ukrainian officials say? What do they pay attention to? Kiev is not telling the whole truth. Kiev is only telling half the truth. Ukraine tries to look good at the talks. It wants to show that it puts pressure upon the Russian position, that Ukraine is not giving a thing up and may soon reach peace. The only purpose of all that speech is to mobilize the population of the country and to go on with fighting. Another purpose is to show that the Russian point is weak while the point of Ukraine is strong, and as they say, they should pull themselves together one more time and defeat the Russian military for good. The keynote we hear from Kiev says that they are discussing the Austrian, the Swedish-like future of Ukrainian armed forces, that they are talking about the neutral status of Ukraine. But Ukrainian officials will never tell you that every time they discuss it, the Kremlin always replies, "Okay, it's all okay, we will consider it, but only on the condition of, first, the Ukrainian recognition of Crimea, second, the recognition of the Luhansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic, third, denazification, and fourth, considering the Russian language as the state language." And Ukrainian officials do not discuss those options. They are simply not going to discuss them. However, they forget to tell the population of Ukraine that without discussion and acceptation of those positions, there will be no future. All they say in point 1, for example, the Swedish or Austrian-like model of the Ukrainian military, the neutral status, and so on, it's all nonsense. It's all about nothing. It will never be agreed upon. Still, Moscow repeats this every single negotiations round. But this is what the Ukrainian reporters forget to say every time. Well, that's not the most important thing. What I have just said about is nothing but a pretty picture for the international community. In fact, what I see now in the actions of the Russian authorities on the liberated lands, where they already have power, that the Russians are not going to give those territories up. They are not leaving them. Those territories will never again become part of any Ukraine that is in fact anti-Russia, even if this very Ukraine anti-Russia pretends to be peaceful for a while. Moscow is very well aware that leaving and giving the lands up would be a failure and defeat. And Moscow keeps meeting for the negotiations with the Ukrainian authorities, and at the same time gradually takes control of the Ukrainian lands. Sooner or later, the Kremlin will pin the West down to the fact. Such a fact that the West could do nothing about. And once again I repeat, stop speculating on this topic and don't become victim of the primitive manipulation. The incumbent Ukrainian government is doing everything to make their failures look as victories and success. The last time they did it, when there was a so-called counter-offensive operation by the Ukrainian military. I only told you the most important things. If one goes deep into the details of that activity, plenty of very exciting moments would be revealed. For example, Nikolaev region governor, Kim, should have better told the truth instead of giggling to the camera. Yeah, Kim, I know you're watching me. You can say whatever you want on camera, but you know exactly what's going on in your region. I mean, not your anymore actually. Of course, you never show it to anybody on camera. And that's what the current government in Kiev is really all about. They are scared of the future. They are scared of the future in which the people of Ukraine will stop believing them. That is what I wanted to say in this video. The next video will traditionally be a report from the front line. Goodbye for now and look forward for the next video.